If someone from your own family has already betrayed you, has already turned their back on you at the moment you needed it most, pay very close attention now. What I am going to reveal to you in this video will completely change the way you view everything that has happened in your life. There is a spiritual law as old as humanity itself, a law that acts in the most absolute silence, that needs no judge, needs no court, needs no lawyer, does not need you to lift a single finger. This law is called the law of return, and it leaves marks, real and visible marks, in the body, in health, in financial life, in the relationships of those who dared to betray their own blood. Today you will understand why that person who hurt you began to wither, why their life went off the rails in a way that no one can explain, why their body began to show strange signs that no doctor diagnoses, and most importantly of all, you will understand what God expects of you at this exact moment of your journey. Stay with me until the end, because the last revelation of this video will leave you completely shivering. I know you arrived here carrying a wound that few people understand, because when betrayal comes from the outside, it hurts, but when it comes from inside one's own house, from someone who shares the same blood, the same last name, the same Sunday table, the pain is of another kind. It is a pain that cuts so deep that no medicine can reach. Perhaps it was a brother who excluded you from the inheritance, perhaps that relative who spread lies and destroyed your reputation, perhaps someone you supported for years and who abandoned you at the first chance. And the worst, people around saw it and remained silent. This silence hurt as much as the stab. You cried alone. You woke up in the middle of the night with a tight chest, asking yourself, what did I do to deserve this? I tell you, you did nothing. The fault was never yours. But this pain has a purpose that you do not yet see. And if now your chest tightened while listening to me, know this. This restlessness was not born today. It comes from a deep place that knows you carry something different within the family, a weight that no one recognizes, but that exists. That is why I prepared the powerful digital book for you, Manual of the Chosen by God to Protect the Family. This material was born for those who feel this weight in their chest and need concrete, practical, real direction. The link is in the video description and pinned in the comments. People who accessed this book wrote to me saying that they found for the first time words for what they had felt for years without being able to name. I do not know how long it will be available in this format, so guarantee yours now. Then come back here and comment, I accept my mission. I read every comment. Now let us go to the heart of what is happening to the one who betrayed you. Because the law of return is not an abstract concept, a beautiful philosophical idea from a self-help book. It is a real mechanism that operates in multiple dimensions at the same time, on the spiritual plane, on the emotional plane, and, as you will see now, on the physical plane of the human body. When someone betrays their own blood, when someone violates the most sacred bond that exists between human beings, that person activates a spiritual gear that they do not control and do not even perceive. It is as if they pressed an invisible button. They do not see it, they do not hear it, they do not suspect what they have set in motion, but the universe recorded it. God recorded it. Every tear you shed in silence was counted and noted, and the return begins to operate, often before the person has any awareness of what they provoked. Do a mental exercise with me now. Close your eyes for a second and think of that person in your family who betrayed you. Visualize their face. Now open your eyes and look at that person's life today. Not with anger, with discernment. That aunt who kept your grandmother's land, who manipulated documents, who lied to everyone, and suddenly out of nowhere began to have health problems without any medical explanation. Exam after exam, no one finds the cause. That cousin who humiliated you publicly at a family party, who diminished you in front of everyone to feel superior, and who now lives mired in debt, with a destroyed marriage, unable to keep a job for more than a few months. That relative who excluded you from absolutely everything, who formed a clique against you, who treated you as if you were a shame to the family name, and who today lives isolated, bitter, alone, aging at a speed that frightens those who look at him. I know you are thinking of someone at this moment. I know the realization is hitting, because what you see in that person's life is not a coincidence. It is not a bad phase. It is not bad luck. It is the law of return collecting from those who violated the most sacred pact that exists, the blood pact. And I know what you are feeling now, a mixture of shock and confirmation, because deep down, you always knew something was happening to the one who hurt you. You saw the signs but had no words to explain. Now you do. And what comes next will make everything even clearer. If the message of this video is resonating inside your chest, if you feel you need to understand more about your spiritual role in this whole story, know that the deepening you seek exists and is within your reach. That is why I prepared the powerful digital book for you, the Manual of the Chosen by God to Protect the Family. The link is in the description and in the comments. Do not postpone this decision. Now I'm going to show you what modern science says about the law of return, and I guarantee you, it will impress you deeply. There is an area of medicine called psychoneuroimmunology, which is the study of how emotions, thoughts, and emotional states directly affect the human body's immune system. And what this science has already proven, with studies published in high-impact scientific journals, is exactly what the sacred scriptures said thousands of years ago. Deep remorse, the guilt that the person does not process and does not face, and the act of betraying those who trust you generate a real, measurable, and devastating biological response in the human organism. When a person betrays someone of their own blood, even if they justify themselves with 1,000 arguments, even if they rationalize and tell themselves they were right, even if they convince everyone around that the real victim was them, that person's body knows the truth. The body records everything. The body does not accept lies, and what happens inside is frightening. Cortisol, which is the main hormone released in situations of intense stress, spikes. And it does not return to normal, it remains elevated in a chronic, permanent way, day after day, week after week, month after month. And chronic cortisol is one of the greatest silent destroyers known to medicine. It destroys the immune system, leaving the body completely vulnerable to infections and diseases of all kinds. It inflames the joints, generating pains that seem to arise from nowhere, and that no anti-inflammatory resolves. It overloads the heart muscle, raising blood pressure to dangerous levels. It completely deregulates the sleep cycle, making the person sleep but never truly rest, never wake up renewed, never feel that the body has recovered its energy. It ages the skin, the hair, the eyes, the internal organs, as if it were accelerating the biological clock from the inside out. Research conducted by teams linked to Brazilian universities has already demonstrated that individuals who live in a state of chronic family conflict, and especially those who are the active agents of the conflict, that is, those who provoked and sustain the situation, develop autoimmune diseases with a frequency much higher than that of the general population. We are talking about rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, psoriasis, thyroiditis, among other serious conditions where the body literally begins to attack itself. The cells of the organism of the one who betrayed begin to function against their own body. As if each cell knew at the deepest level of biology that a spiritual crime was committed, and it tried to correct from the inside what the person refuses to correct in their attitudes, in their choices, in their life. And the Bible already said exactly this thousands of years before any modern laboratory existed. In Proverbs, it is written that envy rots the bones. This is not figurative language. It is not symbolic poetry. It is not a metaphor. It is a literal clinical description of what medicine today can measure with blood tests, bone densitometry, and magnetic resonance imaging. What Solomon wrote by divine inspiration back then, the modern science of the 21st century confirms with data, controlled studies, and measurable evidence. And this destruction that begins on the inside manifests on the outside in ways that you, if you pay attention, recognize immediately when you look at the person who betrayed you. Accelerated and visible aging, as if time passed twice as fast for this person than for everyone around. Unexplainable skin problems that appear and disappear, spots, chronic irritations, itching that no dermatologist resolves, pains that migrate through the body without a clear diagnosis, today in the knee, tomorrow in the spine, then in the shoulders, brutal insomnia that transforms every night into a silent torture, a dull gaze, that spark that vanished from the eyes as if someone had turned off a light inside, progressive isolation, friends who moved away, bonds that broke one by one, loneliness that grows with each passing month. These are the physical and visible marks of the law of return operating in real time. And now I need to reveal to you the most disturbing aspect of all this. These marks, this deterioration in the body and life of the one who betrayed, it does not stop at the betrayer. It spreads. It contaminates the children, the grandchildren. It poisons entire generations. Science calls this transgenerational epigenetic transmission. The most intense emotional experiences we live, especially those linked to betrayal and the breaking of family bonds, physically alter the expression of our genes, and these alterations are biologically transmitted to descendants. He who betrays his own blood does not only harm himself, he is genetically programming the next generations to repeat the same pattern of destruction, of conflict, of rupture. He is planting seeds of pain in children who have not even been born yet. And that is exactly why someone within the lineage needs to have the lucidity and courage to interrupt this process. How many people in your family would have the spiritual depth to understand all this? Few, perhaps none besides you. That is why I prepared the powerful digital book for you, the manual of the chosen by God to protect the family. Those who see what you see need more than willpower. They need real and applied spiritual direction. The link is in the description and in the comments. Access it now and then come back to comment, "I am restored." How many Brazilian families do you know where the same fight repeats generation after generation, like a scratched record? Parents who broke with siblings because of inheritance, and 20 or 30 years later, the children, who were not even present in the original conflict, repeat exactly the same story, with the same bitterness for the same type of reason. Grandchildren who grow up without knowing half the family, without knowing the names of their cousins, without ever having stepped into their uncle's house, all because of a conflict that began before they were born. Cousins who cross each other on the street and treat each other as perfect strangers because the parents decided they no longer speak. This is not a coincidence. It is not an inevitable destiny. It is a negative spiritual inheritance propagating through time and genetics like a shockwave that travels decades without losing strength. And this wave only stops when someone decides to stop it. And here enters one of the oldest and most powerful aspects of this entire story, the mark of Cain. In the biblical narrative, when Cain murdered Abel, his own brother, God placed a mark upon him. This mark is one of the deepest symbols in the entire Bible, because it was not just punishment. It was a sign, it was a universal principle. It was the demonstration that when someone violates the bond of blood, this violation materializes. It leaves the invisible plane and becomes concrete, observable, palpable. And this happens to this day in every city in Brazil. Research in the psychobiology of aging shows that people who cause serious family ruptures present accelerated shortening of telomeres. Telomeres are the structures that protect the ends of chromosomes and function as a cellular age clock. When they shorten, cells age and die faster. In direct language, the body of the one who betrayed their own blood ages faster. The cells die before their time. Health degrades prematurely, as if DNA itself were collecting a debt that the person refuses to pay. If this content is making sense to you, if anything I have said so far has resonated with your story, click the like button now and subscribe to the channel if you are not yet subscribed. Activate the notification bell, because this type of content that unites real science and deep spirituality in a practical and direct way, without stalling, is extremely rare to find. And I have a lot prepared for the next videos. Now let us go to the part that I consider the most crucial and the most transformative of this entire video, the path of restoration. Because I did not bring you here to leave you trapped in pain. I brought you to show you the exit door, to show you that there is a path of healing that is real, that is practical, that is within your reach at this moment. First point that needs to stay absolutely crystal clear in your mind: forgiving and accepting are completely different things. The whole world confuses these two words, and this confusion prevents millions of people from healing. Forgiving is an internal, sovereign, personal act. It is releasing the poison that is corroding you from the inside. It is deciding, with all the firmness of your soul, that that person will no longer be the owner of your emotions, of your sleep, of the direction of your days. To forgive is to say to yourself, I free myself from this chain. And this has nothing to do with accepting what they did. You do not need to accept. You do not need to pretend everything is fine. You do not need to reconcile. You can forgive someone from the bottom of your soul and never exchange a single word with that person for the rest of your life. And that is perfectly right. There is no spiritual obligation to maintain contact with those who tried to destroy you. The sacred obligation that exists is to not allow bitterness to devour you from the inside. Second essential point, betrayal leaves marks on the one who was wounded as well. When someone of your blood stabs you in the back, the emotional impact is not restricted to the soul. It descends to the body. It installs itself in the muscles, in the nervous system, in the sleep pattern, in the ability to trust. But your marks are fundamentally different from the marks of the betrayer. Yours are marks of war, of struggle, of heroic resistance. They are the scars of one who endured too much weight, alone for too long, without anyone to share it with, without breaking. That deep exhaustion that does not pass even after a whole night of sleep. That automatic distrust that arises with any new person who approaches, even when that person demonstrates true love and pure intentions. The tightness in the chest when someone mentions a family gathering, Christmas, Easter, a birthday. The growing desire to isolate yourself, to disappear from the map, to build walls ever higher between you and the whole world. These signs are not weakness. I need you to repeat this now, out loud if you can. This is not weakness. It is the body and the spirit screaming that the unavoidable time has come to take care of yourself. And here is the most powerful revelation of this entire video. When you make the real, deep and definitive decision that the pain of betrayal will no longer be your identity, that you are infinitely greater than what they did to you, something extraordinary begins to move on the spiritual plane. You interrupt the chain, that transgenerational cycle of pain that has repeated for decades in your family. You have in your hands the sacred power to cut it at the root. But there is a mortal trap on this path that brings down even the spiritually strongest, the trap of revenge disguised as justice. The law of return is already acting on the one who hurt you. It is already collecting. At this instant, you do not need to wish for evil. And here comes the hardest and most necessary truth of this entire video. If you feed hatred and a desire for revenge, even being the legitimate victim, the law of return begins to act on you as well. It is impartial. It does not ask who started it. It asks who is planting. Plant hatred, reap destruction, even if your anger is the most just in the world. I know hearing this cuts deep. I know there are nights when anger burns like living fire inside the chest. There are dawns when the only thing occupying your mind is imagining that person suffering triple your pain. But it is exactly at this hour, in this instant of legitimate fury, that your true calling reveals itself with all its strength. Because returning evil for evil is easy. It is instinctive. It is what any ordinary person does without thinking. But holding your own hand when it wants to strike back, breathing deeply when the chest wants to explode, looking at the sky and declaring with authority, I refuse to become that which hurt me. That is spiritual strength of another level. That is rare. And that is exactly what separates those who were chosen from those who merely exist. The difference between seeking legitimate justice and poisoning yourself with hatred is a line so thin that most people cross it without noticing. You start wanting reparation, and before you know it, you are consumed by a bitterness that contaminates every conversation, every thought, every prayer. And in that moment, without noticing, you stop being the one who breaks the cycle and become one more link in the chain of destruction. To truly break this cycle, without destroying yourself in the process, you need to master 3 fundamental things, and I will explain each of them calmly, because they are the foundation of everything. First, knowing how to separate what is your battle from what is God's battle. This is perhaps the most common mistake I see in spiritually sensitive people, good people, people who carry this calling to protect the family, who end up taking on struggles that are not theirs, who enter into conflicts that should be delivered to the altar, who absorb everyone's pain as if they were an emotional sponge, and the result of this is devastating, because the body does not differentiate if cortisol is spiking due to one's own guilt, or due to an excess of others' responsibility. The biological effect is identical. The inflammation is the same. The wear on the heart is the same. The insomnia is the same. So, paradoxically, the person who was the victim of betrayal can end up developing in their own body the same marks I described in the betrayers, not out of guilt, but out of overload, for carrying what was not meant to be carried, for trying to solve alone what should be deposited in the hands of God. And here many people confuse surrender with omission. Delivering a battle to God is not crossing your arms. It is doing your part with wisdom and leaving the result in His hands. It is acting without consuming yourself. It is planting without pulling up the seed every day to see if it has sprouted. Second thing you need to master: knowing when to extend your hand and when to withdraw that hand with firmness. And this is the most painful part of the entire process, because it requires brutal honesty with yourself. Within your family, there are two types of people who hurt you. There are those who erred out of weakness, out of influence, out of immaturity, who made bad choices but who deep down have the capacity for change, who perhaps need a touch of love and a second chance to awaken. And there are those others, those who transformed malice into a lifestyle, who make manipulation a refined art, who lie with the same naturalness with which they breathe, who will not change because they do not want to change. And extending a hand to this second type of person is not love. It is not forgiveness. It is not generosity. It is pure and simple self-destruction. It is what the Bible itself calls throwing pearls before swine. And I know hearing this hurts, because often this person is someone you love deeply. A brother, a father, a mother, a son, But true love does not require you to sacrifice yourself until you turn to dust. True love includes the wisdom to preserve yourself. And this separation, knowing who deserves your extended hand and who deserves only your firm silence, does not come from pride. It does not come from anger. It comes from the Spirit. It comes from discernment cultivated in prayer and in honesty before God. Third and last fundamental thing: rebuilding your identity completely outside of the pain. And this is perhaps the most difficult of the three, because it requires you to look inside yourself with a courage that most people do not have. When family betrayal is very deep, when it comes from those you most loved and trusted, it becomes so entrenched in the soul that the person begins, without noticing, to define themselves by what they suffered. Pain becomes identity. The wound becomes the introduction. I am the one whose own brother betrayed. I am the one the whole family abandoned. When your story of pain becomes the first thing you tell about yourself, when it is the filter through which you see every new situation, every new person, every new opportunity, you are trapped. You have become a permanent hostage of what they did to you. And as long as this is your identity, the cycle does not break. On the contrary, it reinforces itself every day, because pain needs fuel to stay alive. And when it is your identity, you unconsciously seek situations that confirm the narrative that the world is unfair to you, that people always betray, that no one deserves trust. And this attracts exactly more of what you want to avoid. You need to make a radical change in the way you see yourself. You need to see yourself as someone who went through betrayal, not as someone who is defined by it. You went through it. You survived. You learned. And you are standing, stronger than before, wiser than before, more connected with your purpose than ever. This is your true identity, and it is from this identity that the cycle finally breaks. And I need to tell you something that might surprise you. Most people who watch videos like this do not get this far. Most stop halfway, get distracted by a notification, go see something else. The algorithm pushes them elsewhere, but not you. You are here, firm, attentive, absorbing every word, and that says a lot about who you are. It says that inside you there is a thirst for truth that is not satisfied with shallow and generic answers. It says you're willing to go deep, to face the difficult parts, to look straight at what most prefer to avoid. This is rare, this is valuable, and this is exactly the mark of someone who carries a calling that goes far beyond the ordinary. If this content is making sense, if anything I said resonated in your life, click the like button now. Subscribe to the channel if you are not yet subscribed, and activate the bell, because I have many more revelations prepared for the next videos, and you will not want to miss them. I want to end this video by engraving something in your heart that I hope you carry for the rest of your life. The law of return is not divine revenge. It is a natural consequence of the universe that God created. If someone of your blood betrayed you, engrave this with letters of fire. The pain you lived will not go unanswered. The universe does not ignore it. God does not forget. But the best answer, the most powerful one, the one that truly transforms everything, is not the destruction of the other. It is your reconstruction. It is you standing up, firming both feet on the ground, raising your gaze with dignity and declaring, "I will not repeat what they did to me. I will be the turning point of my family," because that is the true mark of the chosen one. It is not a mark of eternal suffering. It is a mark of resistance. It is the living proof of one who passed through the most intense fire and did not turn to ash, turned to gold. And if you arrived here until this final moment, I do not have the slightest shadow of a doubt about who you are. This video has thousands of views, but very few people reach this point. Most gave up on the way, left earlier, got distracted. But not you. You stayed. You heard every word. You felt every truth. And that confirms everything I said from the beginning. There is something different in you. A calling that does not quiet. A mission that does not fade. And now that you know how the law of return operates, how it marks the body of the betrayer, how it propagates through generations, and how you have the power to interrupt all this, you cannot pretend you did not hear. This knowledge reached you for a reason. That is why I prepared the powerful digital book for you. The manual of the chosen by God to protect the family is the next concrete step of your journey. Everything I taught you today in this video is deepened in this material in a way that will give you total clarity about your role and about how to act from now on. The link is in the video description and pinned in the comments. Access it now, not tomorrow, not later. Now. Because a postponed decision is a lost decision. Comment down below, "I am chosen," leave your like, share this video with someone in your family who needs to hear this urgent truth, and subscribe to the channel if you are not yet subscribed. We will see each other in the next video. And remember, every day upon waking and upon lying down, you were set apart for something much greater than you imagine. Do not doubt it. Never, ever.